What's up guys, welcome back to Daniel Talks Football right here on YouTube. I'm Daniel and we are back with another video. In this video we're going to be having a look at Newcastle and what they need to do between now and the end of the transfer window. There's a couple of holes still in this Newcastle squad, obviously of Champions League football this season. So I wanted to have a little look and see what they need to do between now and the end of the transfer window. Before we do get into the video, please make sure to like the video, comment down below and also subscribe to the channel. Go over and follow the TikTok and the Instagram Daniel Talks Football on both. Right, now the aims for this video, Newcastle are obviously very, very close to the FFP line, so the players that we are bringing in need to be fairly cheap. We also need to focus on shipping out fringe players who are on fairly high wages, or just fringe players in general, because it all adds up. Right, we will start off with goalkeeper. Now there's currently 4 goalkeepers at the club, so they definitely don't need to bring a new one in. They've already sold Darlow to Leeds, and with Pope as the undisputed number 1 and Gillespie as the number 3, one of Dubravka and Karius needs to move on. Personally, I'd probably move on Karius. You could move on Dubravka. It depends. Whoever wants it, whichever one. Dubravka you'd probably want a bit of money for. Karius you could probably let go for fairly cheap. 1 million, 2 million. But yeah, no purchases needed in this area. Left back. Now, this is a position that they could upgrade, because Burn and Target, they'll be good enough for this season, is what I'm going to say. They'll be good enough for this season. However, you look at it towards next summer, and hopefully those FFP restrictions will again ease a little bit more as this more sponsorship money comes in, as the Champions League money comes in. You expect them to be able to upgrade in this position next summer. I'd look to go out and get a new star left back next summer. However, for this season, I think Burn and Target, they'll be good enough rotation options. However, you can move on Matt Ritchie and Paul Dunnett. Neither of them are needed. Moving into centre-back. Now, currently you've only got 3 centre-backs at the club between Shah, Lascelles and Botman as the current 3 options. Lascelles isn't good enough. However, I would keep him around simply because you don't have many centre-backs. Shah is also a player whose contract expires next summer. So there's going to be a lot of change at the centre-back position. I think a big centre-back overhaul is needed then. By the end of next summer, it would not surprise me to see Botman be the only centre-back still left at the football club. However, yeah, I think for now you need to strengthen this area. So yeah, I will say 2 centre-backs needed. I would say 1 star centre-back who can start to phase out Shah during the season, before taking over that starting position alongside Botman for next season, and then a backup. You'll see what I mean when I get there. Right back, we've got Trippier as the undisputed starter, and in my opinion, I think Ashby is good enough to be back up at this point. You can give him some minutes in the Champions League versus those lesser clubs that you'll have in the group stage, and you can sense his level. If he's not good enough, you can buy a new right back in January, and I think Kraft and Manquillo, time to move on. Moving on into midfield, and we look at the CDM position. Tonali is the undisputed starter. However, I don't feel like there's any other proper 6 in that squad, so I would personally look to bring in a backup 6. You do have Hayden, however, I think he's one that you could see leave the football club. So I think a new cheap backup 6 should also be one that is on Newcastle's radar. And then moving into centre mid, it's obvious the likes of, Willock, Joelinton and Bruno will all stay. I think Longstaff will also stay to offer the depth. However, you can sell Hendrick and probably loan on Anderson. So then again, there's another player that's going out the door. Obviously, with a lot of these players, Dummett's, the Hendrickses, the Crafts, the Manquillos, the Haydens, it's a possibility you don't get sales from them. If you don't, you can just loan them out, free up the loan space. Yeah, that will help you bring in new players. Moving into left wing now, and obviously you've got Barnes and Gordon as the 2 left wingers. I think you move on Fraser. I think that position's quite sorted. Bringing in Barnes is good. Obviously, you've sold Saint-Maximin as well. But yeah, nothing needed there. Right wing, I think you've got Almiron, who will be the undisputed starter for this season, with Murphy, who's a fine enough backup. However, I do think a new starter is needed next summer to upgrade to a higher level. Don't think it's something they can do this summer. However, I think next summer you want to be looking to go and spend 40, 50 million on a right wing. And then moving on into striker, you've got Wilson and Isaac, who are the only 2 strikers after Wood left the club. I think it would be nice to bring in a 3rd option, with both Wilson and Isaac both being quite injury prone. Right, let's start off by looking at the centre-backs. Now, because of the lack of money, I feel they can only spend on one of the 2 centre-backs that they need. Because of this, the first centre-back I'd bring in would be Axel Tuanzebe. He's still fairly young, he's English, and he's solid enough. As a 4th choice centre-back, I do think he could do a job. And if you give him a 2-year deal, you could probably sell him for 3 or 4 million next summer when the FFP restrictions will be less tight and you can bring in a new better player. Axel Tuanzebe is not a good centre-back, and I'm not claiming that he's, somebody Newcastle should be aiming for. However, with these FFP restrictions, you can't go out and just buy quality players all the time. And I think on a free transfer for fairly cheap wages, if you were to bring in him and my other option, you would then have 5 centre-backs at the club, 3 of which are capable of playing in Sharp, Botman, and the guy I'm going to bring in. Tuanzebe, look, 2-year deal, he would probably take it being a backup. You could sell him after a year, put a release clause in there of 3 million. Anybody then next summer could come in and pay that if they want him. Yeah, it's just depth, isn't it? However, the centre-back I do want to go for, and the exciting one, would be Tosin Adarabioyo. Now, the Fulham centre-back is now 25 years old, and I think a promise of Champions League football, which should be enough to prize him away from Craven Cottage. He's only got 1 year left in his contract, which puts Fulham in the position to need to sell or renew. If he won't renew, I feel like a deal could be done within the region of 20 to 25 million pounds, and it could be the perfect centre-back to partner Botman in a year's time when Shaw moves on. I think the play here, if you could bring in Tosin, would be to start to phase Shaw out as the season goes on, bring in Tosin, and then by the end of the season you can have those 2 starters, and you'll need to bring in 3 backup centre-backs. Moving into DM, and the player I would go for would actually be Wataru Endo from Stuttgart. This is a player I've spoken about on the channel before, and I really, really rate him highly. Endo is now 30 and has been doing quite well for Stuttgart for quite a few years now. He can also fill in a centre-back, which might be needed, as I've sort of said, with the options of Lascelles and Tuanzebe possibly not being excellent. He's again got a contract expiring in 24. At the age of 30, I feel like a deal could be done in the region of 4 to 5 million. He wouldn't like the world a lot, and obviously it's the signing that would make the fans go, why have we done this? It's a bit boring. But he could be a solid squad player. You give him a 2-year deal, you can keep him for that full 2 years, and then at the end of it, you can go out and buy somebody to improve for 30, 40 million. Once those FFP restrictions start to ease, with the European money coming in, with better sponsorship money coming in, I think you could be a good player. So I would go for Wataru Endo. Not the kind of signing Newcastle were expecting to make coming into this window, I am sure. And then last but not least, as striker, we have another player who I think they could pick up for quite cheap. He's in the final year of his contract. His contract expires next summer. It's Kylian Mbappe. I'm joking. Don't kill me. Obviously, he's not going to be cheap, and Newcastle aren't going to be signing Mbappe. The actual player I'd go for will actually be a player whose contract is also expiring in the summer of 2024. It's Kelechi Iheanacho. While a player like Iheanacho does possibly work best in the 2-striker system, as I've seen sort of as he's played for Leicester, I think this would give Howe a different option if he's trying to bring a striker late on in the game, which would be the kind of thing Kelechi Iheanacho would do. Don't think he would start for the side, but I think as a bench option, I think to have somebody who is better to play in the 2 gives you that extra option when you're chasing a game. He obviously already has good chemistry with Harvey Barnes after they've been at Leicester together, and I think he would be quite a cheap player. I've heard a rumoured fee of around 8 million, and I think that's a perfect kind of fee Newcastle would be willing to spend. He wouldn't cost too much, and again, I think he would be another one of those stepping stone players until Newcastle can go out and spend more with the FFP restrictions. If they were to sign these players, they'd be spending about 40 million between now and the end of the summer, which probably is something they can maybe just about do. Obviously, then looking into next summer, you'd probably want to bring in a new centre midfielder, you'd want to bring in a new right winger, and you'd want to bring in 2 or 3 centre-backs. But I think it would set them up in a decent position to be able to challenge for this season. But yeah, this has been a really tough one, because there's a lot of positions that do still need to be improved upon after that obviously really poor Mike Ashley squad. Hope that FFP will keep their hands tied. However, what do you think of what I've done, and what would you do if you had this Newcastle squad? Let me know in the comments below, and I'll catch you all again in the next video. See ya!